We are here today to talk about what many people consider to be a timeless Christmas classic and has been restored gloriously in 4K. The film in question is It's a Wonderful Life. It was directed by Frank Capra from 1946. It stars Jimmy Stewart or James Stewart and Donna Reed. So is this film the heartwarming family classic that we all remember, or is there more to this movie that meets the eye? We're going to dive into that here in this review and a recap, and I'm even going to rate this thing on a scale from 1 to 5. Hi, I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films, and if you just take a moment to go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my channel, I'd appreciate it. So when this film was released in 1946, it was just a little bit after World War II, and you know, these they didn't quite know what to throw at people yet. They were trying to throw some optimism at people, and they did it quite well in this film, and we're going to dive into that here shortly. But I've seen it lots of times before, as I'm sure most people have. I think the first time I was aware of the film before I really watched the whole thing to begin with, I saw it in the film Gremlins. I didn't actually see it. They were watching it in Gremlins, and that was kind of what drew my attention to it to begin with. But over time, I've seen it several times. When it was first released, it wasn't met with the acclaim that it has now. The critics, gave it kind of mild to lukewarm reviews for the most part. Some of them liked it, obviously, but for the most part, it kind of got kind of mid-range reviews, and it didn't really make that much money. And I think the week that it was released, it was like number 6 on of all the movies that were released that week. So it wasn't like initially remembered as a classic, and it wasn't until 1976 when they started playing it on Christmas on television every year, and that was when people really kind of started to really appreciate the film and the story. And it also brings a really strong message about life in general and what one person can do to change things around them. So let's get into the plot. Now, what's accepted in this film, and it doesn't really play hard into every scene, but there is a bit of a supernatural twist going on here. There is an angel up in heaven. He's talking with other angels. It's kind of like shown on screen with lights. The first time you see him, it's kind of a voiceover with these angels talking to another angel. It starts with like a lot of people praying for this man named George Bailey. They're praying that somebody help him. He's in trouble, and they're saying he's a really good man and all this. And then it shows these angels, and they're saying they're going to talk to one angel who hasn't got his wings yet. His name's Clarence, and they're like, we want you to help this man. And in order to help him, we want you to show you his life. So then a large part of the movie after that, it starts to show George Bailey's life, starting when he's a little kid and into a teenager and eventually into adulthood. But George Bailey is played by James Stewart, but not when he's a kid, obviously. He does play him as a teenager and as an adult, but when he's a kid, it shows things that happen to him. Like one thing is his brother almost dies in a sled accident. His brother is sledding, and he goes into this ice, and he's submerged in the ice water, and he saves him. He gets him out of it, and then from then on, his ears all jacked up because he got an ear infection, so he can't hear out of one of his ears. And then later on, when he's a little bit older, he's working at this pharmacy. And the pharmacist got bad news. He's got a letter that his son's died, and he's kind of distraught. He doesn't pay very good attention. He accidentally puts poison into these pills that he's sending to another lady. George Bailey, as a kid, he notices it, and at first he goes and tries to tell his dad about it, but his dad's really busy. His dad owns this company, or he runs this company called a Business and Loan with his dad's brother, Uncle Billy. But he goes to his dad, and his dad's like too busy to talk to him, so he has to go back to the pharmacist. Now the pharmacist is like, why are you late? And his pharmacist is kind of, I guess he's been drinking. He like smacks him across the face. But then he finds out, then George Bailey starts crying, and he's like tells him that he put poison in the lady's pills. And then the pharmacist realizes what he's done, and then he's very apologetic, and he's very sad. And then he hugs him, and then George Bailey tells him he's never going to tell anybody, and he never does. And then it shows him as a teenager. James Stewart they do a pretty good job on the makeup, and he looks a lot significantly younger than he does later in the film. And so he's got his eyes set on this girl named Mary, played by Donna Reed, and they end up going to this dance, and a lot of cute stuff happens. And then he's telling her what he wants to do with his life. He wants to travel the world. He wants to build things, and he's got very high dreams. He's got he basically wants to get out there and do stuff. He doesn't want to be stuck to this building and loan that his dad has. Now his brother's supposed to take over the business, but he's telling her that, and he wants to he wants to lasso the moon and give it to her at one point. He says he's going to lasso the moon and give it to her. And there's a lot of kind of cute back and forth between these characters. But then his dad has a stroke the same night, and then he finds out later that his dad has died. Now, there's a character named Mr. Potter in this film who's very Ebenezer Scrooge-like. He's kind of a miser, and he owns most of the other loans in town. He basically, this building and loan that George's dad owns is the only thing stopping him from owning everything in the town. That's putting a big stumbling block for Mr. Potter, who wants to own everything, and these people aren't at his mercy. But George goes in, and he basically, at first, they're going to sell the business and loan to Potter. And then Potter's got to open his mouth and say some stupid shit, which pisses George off. And then George makes a big speech, and everyone in the room who has to vote on what's going to happen with the business and loan, like, decide to elect George as the next person running the business and loan, which he doesn't want to be. He doesn't want to do it, but he decides to, just because if he doesn't, then Potter's going to own it. So he ends up staying on, despite even though he wants to travel the world. But he's still expecting his brother to take over. But his brother ends up getting married and offered a job with his new wife's dad, which his brother intends to take. But he's trying to. And really, George is very upset about this, but he ends up going along with it. Now, later on, his brother ends up going to war. Now, George ends up not having to go to war, ironically, because of his ear injury. He ends up staying in town, running the business and loan. So there is a lot of exposition here showing George's life, and it sets up these very emotional moments that have a very good payoff later on. They even have some payoff as it's going in different time areas. Like when the next time he sees Mary, she has she's made a picture of him, like he's like a picture of him lassoing the moon, which comes into play several other times. But when he goes, next time he sees her, she's come back from school, and she's engaged to his friend Sam Wainwright, who for some reason goes hee-haw a lot. But and it's kind of like, why is he going hee-haw? But it's his thing. He goes hee-haw. I don't know, but it's I guess it's to identify the character, but that character is a very big entrepreneur, and he's very successful later on. But he's engaged to her, and there's a scene where they call him on the phone, and he's got a good idea. George has very many opportunities throughout this to leave the business and loan and go do something grander. But Sam Wainwright gives him an offer which would make him rich. Is like Sam Wainwright gets rich. But George had an idea earlier on that Sam uses, that he's going to use it, but he wants to include George in it. But George ends up not doing that because he gets married to Donna Reed's character, Mary. But there's a scene when they're talking to him on the phone, and he's telling them the plan. And meanwhile, there's all these girls around Sam Wainwright in the background. But which makes it okay because, I guess he's kind of a player. It doesn't really dig into that too deep. No, this is a pre-code movie. I mean, no, I'm sorry, not pre-code. This is a code era movie, so they couldn't really things like that are implied, but they're definitely implied very nicely, but they couldn't just straight up say it. But anyway, so he ends up getting with Donna. Now, something about this film, I should say, it is about 2 hours and 10 minutes. A great deal of it shows George Bailey's life before the supernatural incident that occurs later in the film. So I remember seeing it, the first time I saw it, I think I watched it on regular television. It had commercials in it. It ended up being almost 3 hours with commercials. And I'm glad I didn't have to sit through the commercials here. But anyway, so he marries Donna, or not Donna, Mary, played by Donna Reed. Then he marries her, and then there's this old house that's kind of that no one lives in. Like earlier when they're teenagers, they're throwing rocks at it. And she wants that house, and she ends up getting it. But before that happens, there's a part where they're about to go on their honeymoon, and he's about to leave, and then suddenly this kind of Great Depression thing happens where everybody in town wants their money back from the business and loan, and they all show up, and they're demanding the money back. Now, and then there's like some kind of clause where Potter calls him, and he's like, I'll bail you out, and I'll bail him out. He's like, I'll tell you what, if you open past 6, if you're not open at 6 o'clock, if you close before then you're done. This business and loan thing's over for you. So he ends up not going on his honeymoon. Actually, Donna Reed or Mary has a big stack of cash they were going to use on their honeymoon, and she comes in and offers it to everybody because there's all the money's tied up, and they're worried. They're like, our money's tied up. We don't know for how long. And then according to the clause, it takes them 60 days to get it back. But he ends up giving them part of that money back. Now, and what's interesting is the first guy, he wants all of his money back. I think it's like $276, and he's like, okay, we're going to divide this $2,000 out between all these other people. Well, how much can you use to tide you over? And he's like, I want it all back, $276. Now that guy comes back in later in a very important part, but so everybody else after that only wants around $20. So he's able to disperse the other $2,000 out and end up with only $2 at the end. So they're able to stay in business after that. And then later on, after the Great Depression's over and then business is back to normal. So the incident here that causes like the big to do, and it causes George to be in a predicament that he is going to try to kill himself. His dad's brother, Uncle Billy, is throughout the film you see him having it's kind of a tough time. He's drinking a little bit. It gets to the point where he's kind of forgetful. He has to put little things around his fingers so he can remember certain things. But he's played by Thomas Mitchell, and a very, very likable character. So what happens is Uncle Billy's at the bank. He's going to deposit about $8,000. Now, $8,000 is a lot of money here. According to the film, it costs about $5,000 to buy a normal house. So it's more than what a house is, $8,000. So he's got that in an envelope, and he's got it in a newspaper, and he comes in, and Potter's in there, and then they have a kind of fairly funny confrontation where Billy kind of like tells him off a little bit. But he ends up accidentally giving him the newspaper that has all the money in it. Now, when he goes over to the cashier or the clerk, he's going to deposit the money. He doesn't have the money. He's like, where did it go? He can't remember what happened to it. Meanwhile, Potter's got the newspaper. He doesn't realize he has the money yet. But once he sees it, at first he hesitates, but then he decides to just go ahead and keep it and be like, screw you guys. I want your business and loan anyway. So this causes George Bailey to... This other guy shows up. He's like a kind of tax guy. He's there already. And so they can't find the money. And they're $8,000 in debt. One of them's going to go to jail, and he doesn't. And he's the type of guy, George Bailey. He's not going to let his dad's brother go to jail, so he's going to probably have to go to jail. But then he finds out that he has a life insurance policy, and he's worth more dead than he is alive. I think he's worth $15,000. There's a very interesting scene, a very powerful scene, I think, when he goes back to the house before he decides that he wants to kill himself, and he's going through the house, and he's just being a real prick. Now, there's something about the film here too. It doesn't have Christmas in it the whole movie. The Christmas only is in the last part of the film, starting from this point. Basically it's all Christmas, and even Frank Capra didn't initially even consider it to be a Christmas film, but now it is. But anyway, so he comes back. All his kids are in there. One of them is playing a piano, getting ready for the Christmas concert. And there's a Christmas tree. It's all Christmas. It's all decked out for Christmas and very Christmassy. But he's going through the house, and he's just very upset, and he's very angry about all this going on. He's very irritable, and he kind of is being a real asshole to everybody. And I saw this film as a play one time, and I really like this scene. Actually played really good on stage because of just how the build up of the scene until he goes through the house. The kids are just being somewhat obnoxious, and then he ends up telling them all off. His wife notices something's going on with him, but she kind of says some mean stuff to him, but that might happen in the heat of the moment. And then he leaves, but then she realizes that he's in a lot of trouble, and she starts making some phone calls, and that's what makes everybody go to pray for him. Now he goes to the bridge. It's bridge in this water. Now he's got the life insurance policy, and he's about to jump into the water when someone else jumps in instead, and he's yelling for help. So George goes down, and he goes into the water and saves this man from drowning. The man ends up being the angel from the beginning of the film, and he tells him that he's an angel and he came to save him. And what he eventually ends up doing is he ends up showing him his life, not his life. It ends up showing him what the world would look like if he was never born. He basically goes back into the town on the same day, and the whole place is now called Pottersville. And it kind of touches on every instance that happened in his life. He ended up saving his brother. His brother died in the ice. The pharmacist ended up killing the kid or the lady, and now he's like a big drunkard, and he's very depressed and all that. And really, since he saved a lot of these people from being in slums and things of that nature, so everybody's in a lot worse state. And actually, the Pottersville is kind of a hopping place, though. Instead of what it is in present day, it's kind of like a normal old town, normal small town. This thing is got it looks like pornography shops and like adult theaters. It almost looks like a kind of a big city. So Potter's like really made this place into to something crazy for a small town. But I'm not sure how he got all that passed, but I guess since he was in charge of the town, he could go ahead and just throw it in there. Now, this is 1946. It's not necessarily the heyday of adult theaters, but I'm not even sure I'm not sure when they really started, but it was kind of early for its time. And if you think about, again, with the code, they were able to get away with some stuff that I think maybe the movie flew under the radar because it was Frank Capra. Now, and then we're going to talk about something really big that was against the production code that got left in the film, but we're going to talk about that later after this. But so he sees his life without him, and even the angels say, "This is a gift I'm giving you that most people never have." But more than anything, he realizes that he wants to be with his wife and his children, who he's, I guess, kind of taken for granted, even though he did appreciate them somewhat, but he does really appreciate them now that he's lost them and even lost his identity. He even runs into his wife here, who's a librarian who is never married. See, I guess they call that like a spinster, like an older woman who's past the age of being married, especially for this time. So all of this is kind of reminiscent of A Christmas Carol. You even got an Ebenezer Scrooge like villain, like Potter, and you got him seeing his life without him in a supernatural type of way. And of course, once he comes back to he decides that he wants to keep his life, and he's very happy that he's back in Bedford Falls. That's the name of the town. He ends up being extremely happy, and that's the part it actually shows in Gremlins when he's running through the streets, excited that he's still alive, and he's even excited he might be going to jail because at least he exists, and at least everything that he's done in his life mattered. But he goes back to the house, fully ready to go to jail. The cops are there to arrest him. They're like going to arrest him already. But he finds his kids and he hugs them. He's happy to see them. His wife's not there, but then she arrives, and so a bunch of other people from the town come in there, and they all come, and they have money, and they start giving him money, and he gets it's all these people that he saved during the Great Depression. That even that guy that like wanted all of his money, he comes back in there and he gives him money to save him from having to go to jail. And so he ends up, so it's a very, very beautiful moment in the film and very encouraging for humanity. And then he even gets a call from Sam Wainwright, and he tells him he's going to give him some money as well. So he ends up having plenty of money, even more than what he needed. And so the guys are like, the insurance tax guy even they all start to sing and be jolly and drink stuff. And even the insurance guy even gets involved with it, and even the cops. And then there's the famous line at the end. Throughout the angel who doesn't have his wings, he has a scene where he tells him, they're inside of a bar and they hear a bell ring. He says every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings. And at the end, he gets a book, I think it's Tom Sawyer. He opens the book and it's got a message in there written to him from the angel saying that he's going to get his wings. And then there's a bell on the Christmas tree and it rings. And then the daughter's like, "Look, Daddy, there's every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings." So then he got his wings. But that is it's very beautiful in a way, the film, and just how it calls back all those things that it shows you earlier, which it is very heartwarming and it has a very great emotional depth here. Whether you consider that to be sentimental or not, I don't know. Upon watching it this time, now I've seen it several times, it kind of got to me more than it normally does for some reason, but especially because I knew what every scene was involved, where it was headed to, and just thinking about like moments in somebody's life that are important and how they pay off, especially in this film. But even in real life, your moments in your life, if you were to think about if they're going to show you these moments from your life and how they matter, you think about those important moments, and it is it could be an emotional thing. And I think if you really immerse yourself into this film on that level, you may feel that emotion. So this film is newly restored in 4K. Now, they did a terrific job. Now, it is a 1946 black and white film. The good thing about this film is that it's kind of been taken care of over the years. So it's been remastered before, but this copy looks better than I've ever seen it look. It even has a HDR, but HDR is usually for a color upgrade, but it actually it works for the film. There's There's 2 discs in here. There's a 4K disc, and there's also this other one that has a Blu-ray. Now the Blu-ray has the color version on it. I've never watched the color version. I might pop it in and take a look at it. I didn't realize it was the colored version until when I sat down to do this. I'm like, wait a minute, this Blu-ray's got the colored version on it. But I don't know if I necessarily want to see it in color. I think it works very nice in black and white. And here you see a pretty good bit of detail with this 4K upgrade, and the blacks are very deep, and everything really looks terrific. It is shot with those bars on the side, so I mean, be ready for that. Anyway, let's go ahead and rate this film. I'm gonna rate this film a 4.5 stars. It is a beautiful film, and to me, it is a timeless holiday classic, even though the Christmas part doesn't come in until near the end. But the fact that really, even if it doesn't come in the end until the end, the whole thing kind of has that build up of what you would expect, like a feel-good Christmas movie about someone's life, and how much their life matters to other people around them. It does have all of that in there in a very, very astonishing way. So I'm going to give it 4.5 stars. Anyway, if you've seen this film, which I'm sure most of you probably have, or if you've seen this 4K release, or even had a reevaluation, I think in different parts of your life, watching this film, you're going to have a different interpretation of what it all means. But if you haven't done so already, if you would subscribe to my channel, like this video, and go ahead and watch this movie. It's a great Christmas film. Anyway, I'm Dave Watkins. Thanks for watching.